discretion is advised.
Flight attendants. What's the dirty little secrets of your industry? Flight attendants get equally, if not more annoyed, when flights are delayed. A lot are paid only for the flight time, meaning they aren't paid to sit at the airport, to wait, or even to greet customers during onboarding. For that reason alone, the longer the flight the better. Imagine working on a short route, where your actual work is 3-4h, but you're paid for 55 minutes as that was the duration of the flight. A friend of mine who works for Emirates told me this little gem. Whenever they fly into Saudi Arabia, Emirates makes the flight attendants lock the entire galley, including all the food, water and drinks, all the napkins and cutlery too. This is BQs in the past. Saudi Arabian authorities would come on board and literally take anything they want and walk out. And there was nothing the airline or staff could do. The podcast Black Box Down goes into a lot of crew management issues and occurrences. It's a wonderful podcast if you enjoy that side of air travel. If you don't like flying because you're scared you'll crash, it might actually help you, as it did me. Listening to the 1000s of things that must go wrong in order for passengers to be in danger really helped my nerves. Or I realized that if I did die, it wouldn't be slow. I'll be scared for maybe a few seconds then die. And I'm okay with that, all things considered. I used to be a flight attendant, and when someone was really rude I'd just go to the computer. We had to reset the in-flight TV screens and I'd keep resetting this sporadically so that they couldn't watch their movie. Very petty of me, I know. Not far, but worked ground crew at a private airport. Flights from other countries have to throw away all uneaten food right off the plane, as it is international waste and needs to be incinerated. Additionally, if flights for private planes are delayed, their food that was standing by has to go somewhere, so they gave it to us. So tasty. Not a secret, but if you're nice you can get quite a bunch of stuff for free. Example, I was on a flight home American Airlines and there was a baby behind us that was just not having it. Pretty much cried all the way from Phoenix to Chicago. I felt awful. I was in the aisle and saw that both the parents were taking turns walking around with the baby. So I asked them if they wanted something, drink or a snack. I figured even the human interaction would be nice. I ordered them something and just went back to my movie. A few minutes later I got a tap on the shoulder and got a little goodie bag with some treats and drinks and a little voucher for 24-hour access to the AA lounge. Be nice people, it pays off. I fly a lot for work. Coming out of the Middle East, it's not uncommon to find someone in your seat who refuses to move. I wasn't in the mood for it, but the poor crew member from Emirates was there and got a load of abuse from the guy refusing to show ticket, etc. I just took her to one side and said put me anywhere. Half jokingly I said I have enough miles to upgrade to business if they could do that on the flight. 2 minutes later she came back and loudly announced to the guy that I was being upgraded. They never took the miles. Coming back from Canada, I paid extra for the bulkhead, damn you bae. There was a family who were separated and the baby was on the bulkhead with mum. The parents kept coming up and down and fussing. The baby was fine, but their 3-year-old who was back with dad wasn't settling. The crew was having issues. I was ready to sleep and had had enough. I kindly offered to trade seats, just wasn't a dick about them keeping me awake. Crew bought me a business class meal and champagne for making their lives easier. Slept like a baby. A buddy of mine has been a pilot for the better part of 30 years and says that back 15-20 years ago the Russian Soviet pilots and crew had to be watched like hawks, sometimes even being locked in a room because there was a high chance of them getting absolutely shit-faced before when they were supposed to fly. I once overheard a phone call at the gate check-in. A flight attendant was hungover, slept in and was going to be pretty late. A minute later, the person at the kiosk made an announcement about how some pre-flight maintenance was going to delay the flight. I used to work as a flight attendant and I've seen a lot of stupid and crazy shit. The alcoholism, drug abuse and depression is common in the domain. It's hard for a lot of people to live a superficial life. It's fun at first to see new places and new destinations. But at some point Rome or New Delhi is just another place at work. Sound downing, but I've seen a lot people complain about this and me as well. The toilets are near where we sit. And no matter how hard you try to cover the fact that you're taking a dump, it makes a different noise than if you just go number one. No matter what stupid thing you see or read about getting a free upgrade, 99% of the time it's all bollocks. I had a friend working for Bay who would have passengers claim recent surgery or other medical reasons for being upgraded. She would respond, unfortunately business is full, but since you have this medical condition we will need a note from your doctor on letterhead with a wet signature certifying you fit to fly today. They would immediately backtrack. In my case with a different European airline, we would have people ask for an upgrade and we would quote the price. Typically the fare difference, with it being day of departure. They would freak out. On American US United they charge like $100 for an upgrade. We'd have to remind them that this wasn't a flight from New York City to Orlando. You have a set limit of how many hours you can fly, and you need 12 hours of rest between duties. I've once seen a pilot wait 2 unnecessary minutes to turn off the engine to make the flight attendant out of hours for the next day. My roommate's a flight attendant and she says the flight crew including pilots often stays at the same hotel and parties together, and that the pilots often sleep with flight attendants regardless of marital status. I don't know if that counts as a secret of the industry, but she says it is. My aunt was a flight attendant for a major airline for nearly 40 years. She flew exclusively South American routes from the US. She told us how drug use and alcoholism was rampant in her industry: flight attendants, maintenance and ground crews, and especially pilots. There was one pilot she'd work with frequently that would pass out during flights. The flight attendants would set timers to remind themselves to go check on them. She was not excluded from the drug and alcohol issues. The airline made a habit of surprising people with drug tests as they came off international flights. She and other flight attendants figured out system for them to be able to escape without getting drug tested. Smuggling was also common among flight staff. The amount of stuff she smuggled back into the US from Brazil, Argentina, Peru, and Chile would have put her in federal prison for a few years. She's gone now. I miss her insane stories. Edit: my mom corrected me and said she didn't fly exclusively to South America until the last few years of her life. She also flew to Western Europe, Japan, and did 2 trips where she flew soldiers to the Middle East. The flight attendants already know what you are going to say. Every joke, come on, request, complaint, they know you are going to say that thing. If this is their 3rd flight of the day, they've heard it 6 times already. No one is clever on an airplane. Not a flight attendant, but used to be a supervisor for a major US carrier. We had an employee whose child had a science project about germs. She brought her kid in on an overnighted aircraft and they took samples from all over the galley, laboratories, seats, tray tables, just about everywhere. The area with the most amount of fecal matter was the tray tables. Yep. I also never drink anything that is never sealed, because I have witnessed cleaners who clean the laboratories and jump to the galley without changing gloves. Used to work for a UK airline non-crew. It was normal for passengers that died on board to be kept in their seats until landing. They would be wrapped in blankets and propped up to look like they were sleeping, to not freak out other passengers. I have an autistic brother who's obsessed with planes, and I remember one time flying AirAsia. They had a selection of collectible plane models on sale. We could afford one being the end of a holiday, but because he was crying and upset, I remember a flight attendant gave him one of them for free. It made his day, and he was quiet as for the rest of the flight, which everybody on board appreciated. Was a really cool thing for her to do. Former flight attendant here. First of all, I'd like to say that everything varies from airline to airline and country to country. I worked for a Latin American airline. The environment was quite toxic. There was a lot of harassment from the pilots and co-pilots. Some of them would abuse the position of power they had to make some indecent proposals to the air hostesses. Maybe this is not a secret, but for me, it was a shock when a pilot aged 40 plus would text me during my days off to hang out. I was 19. I don't even know from where he got my number, and I felt very uncomfortable around him. This was nothing in comparison to other things that many of us experienced. The galley. Not a flight attendant, but ex-engineer, and trust me, if the aircraft galley were inspected like any other food business it would be condemned within the first trolley. That's excluding the dirty water tanks and cleaning crew using one rag from ceiling lights to floor trim. If you ask anyone who maintains aircraft, you bet they'll buy their meal at the airport. Source: my mom is a flight attendant. When flight attendants greet you as you step on the plane, they are doing two things: one, checking to see if you're drunk, stoned, and two, checking to see if you're strong enough. So in the event of an emergency they can tap you in if need be, that is need to pull open the emergency door or lift something, etc. Flight attendants also aren't paid for boarding, which ducking blows. Believe me, if you're delayed they want the plane to leave just as much as you do, because they are paid by the hour and the clock doesn't start until the main cabin door is closed. Former FAR: as a new hire FAR I would obey the FAA rules like we were taught, but then after a couple years I learned the easiest way to have a good flight was to learn which rules to ignore, especially carry-on items in first class. Put a few passenger items in empty galley carts to get us out on time. Flying out of Hawaii and the couple in front of me had been split up on their return flight. He was a total dick to check in, demanding they move his seats. Check-in attendant said nope, sorry, and they did not seat them together. I was next in line and our seats were split too. I said simply, I'm definitely not that guy. I was also separated from my wife. I'm guessing you don't have any seats because you didn't for the last guy, but anything you could do would be appreciated. Moved my wife and I together and upgraded, literally, for just being a decent person. Being decent to people will take you places. Shit's not rocket science. We have a list with every passenger's full name and seat number. Sometimes when we are bored we'll Google you. Flying nice and glamorous. One of my friend got spit on and cornered by a passenger in the company and the police did absolutely nothing about it. Also have heard of a few pilots trying to get sexual favors in flight. To no avail from my knowledge. They often don't get paid until after boarding is completed, despite normally having to spend hours at the airport prior to boarding. A significant number of them are homeless, living out of their suitcase and the crew break room. I was a pilot for a low-paying regional airline in the US. The pay for new flight attendants is pathetically low, since they spend 90% of their lives on the road anyway. Some don't have a permanent place to live. I'm a regional flight attendant. This is 100% true. I do not have a permanent residence. I'm basically homeless. I live out of my suitcase, and I'm on the road most of the month. I do sleep in the airport many nights a month too. It's not fun, but it's free. Never affiliated with an airline, but worked at hotel that had an airline contract. We'd pick up a crew, guarantee their rooms, and take them back. Part of their contract was that they had to have 8-10, can't remember specifically, of uninterrupted sleep. Basically their rooms had to be perfect. I can't go out at 2 AM. No vacuuming the hallway while those rooms were occupied. Don't even check in guests with kids near them. We were always told that if a pilot doesn't get the 8 hours of sleep or whatever, they have to cancel the flight. All this to say I'm kind of appalled at all the stories of flight crew getting trashed and partying. Do you know what kind of hell we went through to make sure your stay was perfect? We eventually lost the contract because of ongoing housekeeping issues. Nothing that would make your normal guest complain. Mind you, little things. Not in far, but I once rode up an elevator in Johannesburg with a crew from a Middle Eastern airline. Don't remember which one, but the male pilots talking to each other were clearly Australian. The women FARs were in head-to-toe Muslim garb and quiet. The FARs got off on my floor and ended up in rooms near mine. Later when I saw them, they were all blonde Aussie shilious, wearing skimpy clothes and partying hard while off duty. Quite a contrast from their public image. No, I did not hit on them or flirt with them, etc. I'm married and not a creep. I'm literally sleeping on the floor of JFK right now. It's 11 AM Monday. Been here since Sunday 8 PM for a 10 PM flight. Tell me, they knew the pilot was out of hours long before they had to do the math. Before departing Boston, I bet they knew and cancelled the flight, which they only did after delaying it 3 times. Only so they could push it to the next business day. They just didn't want to pay hotel and transportation, didn't they? I was a flight attendant. We had a boiler in the back galley that provided warm water that we used to serve hot drinks, coffee, tea, chocolate. Well, the tanks in which water is stored are rarely cleaned thoroughly. I had that water myself every now and then. Since it was the only free thing we were allowed to take from the bar, we had to pay for water bottles. But if I fly as a passenger, I try to avoid it as much as I can. I can't even imagine the amount of germs and mold that can be forming in those tanks. Also, the water intake for the refill of that tank is centimeters away from the waste disposal valve. Planes don't really fly. The pilots just extend the landing gear with stilts that extend for miles. The next time you see a video of a plane, just look a bit closer and you'll see what I mean. It's more of a bus, really. Turbulence is either due to the bumpy road on the ground, or from when the stilts get wobbly from brushing up against tree branches, giraffes, and the like. Don't tell anyone though. If you bring a box of chocolates for the flight crew, you will get all the free snacks and sometimes beers they can throw at you. My old co-worker had been a flight attendant for like 20 years and knew all the secrets. This was his best recommendation for a good flight. I read once that you should never use the coffee pot in your hotel rooms because if stewardesses stay in those rooms, they use those pots with hot water to wash leggings and pantry hose and socks. This little secret has been in the news lately. Pilots and flight attendants are usually only paid when the aircraft door is closed. I'm a flight attendant for a regional carrier, get paid per diem. About $2 an hour from the moment we sign in until the moment our trip is finished. However, our hourly rate is only paid when the door's closed. While the hourly rate might sound good, 20, 50 plus depending on carrier and seniority, we are typically only paid 75 to 85 hours a month. Click subscribe. If you enjoyed this video,